winning. So why are a lot of people calling them the villains of the NBA? Well, how about this? Harden, Kyrie, KD, Blake, Aldridge, 40 combined all-star selections. Harden was asked about the villain label. He said, quote, "Oh, I don't pay attention to it." We got Chris Broussard paying attention to all of this with us now. Broussard, what do you make of the Nets being labeled the villains of the NBA?
This is par for the course. This is what happens when you have a stacked team. We saw it in Miami with the big three. First year, remember, they were the villains. LeBron even tried to embrace that villain title, and it really wasn't him. Then KD goes to Golden State, same thing. They're viewed as the villains because they were stacked. Then throw in James Harden leaving Houston and the way he did it. And people like Nick Wright, who are such, character, you got to be sportsmanlike and all that stuff. They hate that stuff, the way he left. So that add that onto it. And then they're fooled by the names. Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge are not in their prime.
Thank you.
This has happened many times before. And so it shouldn't, people are overreacting to those additions. Here's the key, though. This is player generated. And that's the difference. Super teams are not new. The Larry Bird Celtics, who were stacked, added a Bill Walton. All right, the Magic Johnson Lakers with Kareem, who were stacked, added a Bob McAdoo. And then later drafted James Worthy with the #1 pick in the draft. I mean, these things aren't new. Shaq and Kobe, they get Karl Malone and Gary Payton in 2003. What is different is that they're player generated. And so LeBron caught heat when he put that thing together in Miami. KD caught heat when he goes to Golden State because that was player generated. And they're playing in the summer, and KD and Kyrie to Harden. Hey, this would be cool if we play together. They kind of brought him to Brooklyn. And then they were talking to Blake and Aldridge as well. So that is what fans don't like, because it implies, at least a lot of fans take it like, you don't want to compete. You just want to stack the deck and win easily, and that is what the fans don't like.
Yeah, well, here's the deal. It's ridiculous, and it's lazy reporting. Let's go back 3 months, the James Harden trade. Thanks. Everybody was talking about how could this work out? We've never seen this type of big three. When you go down to Miami, it was different. These are 3 different type of players. Now you're putting 3 ball-dominant guys on the same court. How is this all going to work out? And they figured it out. And then let's move forward to now we got Blake Griffin. Now we got LaMarcus Aldridge. And these guys are trending in the wrong direction. Aldridge, who is this guy? Come on, now he's averaging a career low. We're talking about a guy, Nick, who you talked about yesterday saying, well, this is essentially a guy who got cut. Usually when you have these buyout guys, the teams just get rid of them. They don't really get rid of them because if they're in the playoffs. Well, he's essentially a guy who got cut. So let's not forget that conversation yesterday. And Blake Griffin, the thing that makes him special is his above-the-rim play. This is a dude who now for the very first time is starting to dunk again, but he went almost 2 years without getting a dunk. So please, they're just names at this point. They're a veteran presence, and that's all they are. So this is lazy reporting to me.
Well, so a couple things. One is Brandon said people were very curious about how they could make it work with all the big 3 together. And by the way, I am still curious because we haven't seen it yet.
Yep.
We've seen 2 of the 3 on the court a bunch. We've seen the 3 of them on the court for 186 minutes. So I am still a little curious how that's going to work. But listen, LaMarcus Aldridge was bought out by a playoff team because, as Brandon said, he's not good at this point. He's flatly not. Blake, and we've seen now, last night if you watch the game, the best plus-minus on the Nets was Blake. His stat line was pretty pedestrian, but he had 5 rebounds, he had 6 assists, and over the weekend in the game Harden had 44, Blake was their second leading scorer with 17. If I were a Nets fan, which I know is going to surprise the audience, but I'm not, I would be a little optimistic that maybe, yes, obviously Blake's athleticism is 5% of what it was. I would be a little optimistic, though, that his basketball soul was essentially being sapped in Detroit. It was a terrible team, and he wasn't the player he once was. And that I think Blake might actually be able to be a useful player for them. But Wilds, the reason they are villains is not because of Blake and Aldridge. They're villains because the three superstars are three of the most polarizing guys in the league. Brandon, you can say, oh my goodness, all you want. I'm right. Kyrie Irving has been polarizing. He was polarizing at the end of his time in Cleveland. He was incredibly polarizing in Boston. And as soon as he went on his sabbatical this year, he became more polarizing. KD, I haven't checked yet this morning. Right. Well, it's 5:30. Oh, he's not on the West Coast anymore. I'm not sure where he is. But I know when he'll wake up, he'll log on to Twitter. And he will be out there, either on his account or a burner account, interacting with us. And Harden, once upon a time, I was the only man in America defending James Harden outside of Houston when he was averaging 40 points for 3 months in 2019, and so nobody cared. And so,
for 2 months because he went to Vegas when he should have been with his team.
Let's not do the Harden argument right now.
Okay, we'll do it later.
Let's not do the Harden argument right now. The point that I'm making is those three guys none of them are Steph. None of them are Giannis. None of them are Clay, where everyone has a pretty positive feeling about them. All of them cause massive emotions in one direction or another. That's why this team's the villains, because the public has very polarizing takes on the three stars. It's not because of LaMarcus Aldridge, who Wilds nobody has had an opinion on in 5 years. Nobody's had a hot LaMarcus Aldridge take. It's because of how people feel about Kyrie, KD, and Harden. I think that's pretty clear.
That's right. All right, do you have an issue? I don't believe that anyone actually thinks they're villains. They're great for the league. We want to see Brooklyn versus LA. That's the best thing for the league. As our resident NFL GM, are you also the resident basketball GM? You are, right? It's like a hybrid. It's a hybrid job, right? You can do both.
Sure is.
Okay. Do you have any issue with the buyout market? The fact that the Nets are paying their cap hit's like $2.1 million for Blake and LaMarcus, and I think the Lakers cap hit for Andre Drummond is like a little over $500,000. If there's any issue, it seems like the market for they're not superstars, but certainly collectively those three guys are their cap hit's less than $3 million. As resident GM, do you think that's fundamentally flawed?
No, because if those players had value on their contracts, Broussard, they would be traded. Just go a year ago or two. Yeah, a year ago, Andre Iguodala. Andre Iguodala went to Memphis, thought he was going to get bought out, and they said, no, we think there is value, and we think someone will trade for you. Anyone in the league could have had any of these three players if they wanted to pay their full salary. Andre Drummond was on waivers. Anyone could have claimed him. No one did. So, Broussard, I don't have an issue with the buyout market. It's obviously going to favor better teams, but so is every part of free agency.
The small market, non-glamour teams are upset about it. And you better believe when the collective bargaining agreement comes up again. Now, it's not till 2024, but they're going to try to do something about it to keep these teams from getting these very good players, or good players at least, at minimum level salaries. Now, here's the one thing quickly about what you said about the Nets, Nick. I don't disagree that their three stars are polarizing, but I'm not sure they were viewed as villains before Blake and Aldridge joined them. Right. I think people were just concerned about and curious, how's it going to work, and thought they could be great if it works out. But I don't think they were viewed as villains. I think people are overreacting, as Brandon said, to the names of Blake Griffin and then LaMarcus Aldridge, and it got crazy. And so that's why people are thinking they're villains, even though these last two additions aren't guys that are close to their prime at this point.
All right, I got to leave it there. Chris Broussard, thank you as always. Appreciate the time. We're back talking some football now. Trevor Lawrence, he's a lock for that top spot. But what will your team do in the draft? Bucky Brooks with all the answers. That is next. Stay with us. First things first.